it got to the point where, I mean, I wouldn't say I had suicidal ideation, but I had some dark times and I had some conversations with my wife, and she was worried. She was worried for me. She knew that if I stuck on that path, um, it would have led to me missing a lot on my kids' lives, and probably would have put a strain on our marriage. I mean,
Hello, this is Tab Bartley, and you are listening to the Oath We Took podcast, the show that tells the Marine Corps story through the Marines that served. I'm joined today by John Locke. He is the reason for this podcast. I know so many amazing Marines who hesitate to tell their stories. Their stories hold so much power and so many life lessons. Oftentimes, though, they go untold. Not every Marine story is the same. What is the same is the oath we all took. Thank you, John, for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you.
No problem. No problem. Happy to be here.
One of my things before I ask the first question is it's always crazy to me how small the Marine Corps is and how easy it is to find Marines places when, like, realistically there are so few of us. So I met John through work through USDA, which is awesome. And so I'm going to ask the first question, which is, why did you decide to join the Marine Corps?
I would guess two reasons. First is peer pressure. My best friend joined. And second was a little bit of a legacy. My grandfather served immediately post World War II. I would say right on the back end of World War II. 1945 is when he joined. So it was just super. He was just to see the look on his face when I told him I was enlisting was just something I'll never forget. So twofold. Peer pressure and legacy, tradition. So.
And when you were, like, even though it was peer pressure, were you looking at a specific job, or were you kind of just like, I just want to be a Marine? Or did you kind of have like that, like, I'm going to do this in the Marine Corps?
I did not want to join the Marine Corps. No, I wanted to do Air Force Pararescue. Yeah. I wanted to do Air Force Pararescue. So I was a gymnast growing up for about like 8 to 10 years before I enlisted. So I was used to, like, flying high and flipping, and then I really wanted to jump out of airplanes. That was like one of the big things, and that was like one of the cooler jobs that and then I had some back issues, like when I was 16, 15, enough that probably would have disqualified me for jumping out of airplanes, any sort of things with any jumping, and I knew there's elevated medical evaluations for those, so I knew better to set my expectations to a branch that would accept me for the medical issues that I had, and they were totally cool with it. So I was really happy. I picked the Marine Corps.
And what MOS did you end up picking in the Marine Corps?
So funny, another story. My recruiter, who was also a motor transport operator, 3531, he's like, I told him I wanted to be a mechanic, and so he's like, oh yeah, I'll put you in as a 35X, which is just you could be an operator or a mechanic. So 35X is just you find out sort of after NCT whether or not you're going to go towards mechanic school or if you're going to go towards operator school. And of course I went operator school because that's just how the Marine Corps works, and so happy I did it. Much better than being stuck in the motor pool all day turning wrenches. I got to go out and see a lot of great things as an operator. It was I don't regret it at all. Sort of didn't really happen like what I thought was going to happen, but I was very pleased that I ended up becoming an operator. Yeah.
And when did you enlist in the Marine Corps?
So I joined 2 days out of high school. I graduated in June 8th, 2013, from Keefe Tech in Framingham, Massachusetts. And then I went to Parris Island on June 10th, 2 days later, 2013. So no senior summer for me, no graduation party.
I was about to say,
literally,
dang.
Just went 2 days after. Couldn't be happier because I got out off active right at 17 in May. So I had a perfect fall transition to community college. I did the reserves. I did active reserves for 1 year. So it was joining so quickly out of high school allowed me to go basically at 22, 23, just go straight into the fall semester of 2017, I believe, is when I got out off active. So no, I don't regret that at all. Obviously, there's missed that senior summer and the goodbyes and all that, but whatever, I was really really happy. So I was a fairly young veteran at community college. I mean, most veterans you see are in their mid to late 20s. I was in my early 20s still, so I was just 4 years older than most kids. So.
And how was that going to community college, while in the Marine Corps and kind of like that path? I feel like actually the last few guests I've had on, not like intentionally, but has been reservists. And it's like, somebody who is active duty. I really don't know much about the reserves. And then the more I hear about it, I'm just like, balancing both worlds just seems so challenging, especially at like that young of like not so much an age, but like career. Like it's just two completely different career paths almost that you're having to like manage both of them.
So it was incredibly challenging, but incredibly rewarding. I was a 22-year-old sergeant with 15 or 10 to 15 reservists under me. Every one of them was older than me. It's a great, and a lot of them are in careers, jobs, making quadruple what I would make right out of college, because they're all plumbers and HVAC technicians, mechanics. Some are, like software engineers. Like the reserves is just a different world where you can have a lance corporal making six figures, and you can have a captain that's a truck driver. Like it's just such a different world. I personally love the reserves. I thought it was just it was fantastic. I joined First Battalion, 25th Marines, infantry battalion out of Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and it was just a blast. Being an H&S, I immediately came in and was the operations chief for the motor transport platoon, and it was so rewarding. And ended up becoming like sort of the S4 lead, and just every meeting with company leadership, I was the S4 rep, and it was just couldn't say enough good things about the reserves. The only reason I got out was because they were going back to Okinawa. They were doing a UDP there, and I just finished up 2 years in Okinawa, like 2 or 3 years prior. I had a girlfriend, was already in school, already had housing out there, and it just would have been a real mess to pack up my life, while in school, while I would have had to terminate a lease. It would have been very, very messy to be able to do like a 6 to 8 months UDP back in Okinawa. Believe me, if I wasn't in school at that time, I probably would have done it again because I loved Okinawa. I loved living there. It was a blast. So.
I feel like everybody who I have on the podcast says that about Oki, that they just like
Really?
absolutely loved their time in Oki. I haven't had anybody that's been like, nah, it wasn't for me.
I feel like there was three groups in Okinawa of people. It was like barracks rats, so like like barracks dudes who wouldn't ever leave. They'd save all their money. They go to the gym, or they'd just play video games. You had like the gym dudes who would like just lift all the time, just get huge. I was on Schwab, so Schwab is a very remote base up north, and so there was no base housing. So it was all geo bachelors, single bachelors, well basically E5s and below. There was some like staff NCO housing, but they didn't want to stay there. So they almost the only staff NCOs I knew that stayed the night there were geo bachelors that chose to stay there. So basically, think just E5 and below, 95% men, a lot of testosterone, a lot of craziness, and when typhoons would hit, it was just a total disaster. Dudes would be going out with their tarps and just parachuting off of the third deck balcony. It was a wild time, but great time. And then the third group was like the explorers. So that was like me. You had your barracks guys that stay inside. You had your gym guys that would just lift all day, and the third people would be like the explorers, guys who go spearfishing and go out in town. Like grab a libo buddy, and you just go out and you eat. Two different places. Because I mean, when I was there, libo was good. It was before a lot of restrictions. It was kind of like in between car crashes and DUI. So I had a pretty unique time between 14 and 16, where there wasn't a lot of incidences to create more liberty restrictions. So
And how was that experience, do you think, going from, like the reserve and like doing like living in the civilian world and then essentially like all of a sudden not, being a Marine and away from home and away from all of that. Do you think it was a little harder as a reservist?
I think so when you're in
Maybe.
school, it's it's it was easy because I wasn't working a full-time job. I was able to do like reserve stuff, like say my company first sergeant would hit me up and be like, "Hey, I need you to get accountability for all your Marines. There was an incident with another reservist in another unit, like something happened. I just need you to get all accountability, or I just need you to make sure everyone's all set with the time they need to be here this weekend," and that type of stuff. That was really easy. Shoot a quick text out, or if I had to share like gear roster and stuff, I could do that. If I was working, it would have been a lot harder because I would have had to wait till I'm off work, hop on my computer, and then I'm doing this at like 8, 9 o'clock. I didn't have kids when I was in community college and a reservist. So if I had kids crying, that would have been another thing. So when I was in school, it was fine. I was able to just hop my laptop and share gear roster, share that type of stuff. But I could see being someone that has kids, has a full-time job, handling reserve duties on top of their family duties, on top of their full-time job. That could be very difficult, very, very difficult. So I have a lot of respect for fathers, mothers, parents that are sort of having those families, handling their Marine Corps stuff, and then handling their personal stuff all in the same sphere. That's insane. It's crazy to me. But
if you were giving somebody advice or somebody considering joining the Marine Corps or the reserves, what is something that you felt like that you got out of the Marine Corps reserves or the Marine Corps even, that you don't think you would have gotten on a different path?
Yeah. So, and just to reiterate, I would, if I were to tell someone, if they asked me, should I join the Marine Corps, I would say yes. And if they said, should I go active or reserved, I would say active. If you don't have a lot of family obligations, for instance, a sick parent, or a partner, a spouse, kids, that type of stuff. If you are just a young man or woman in your late teens, early 20s, with no obligations, I would say go active. If you obviously have those family obligations, reserves is fine too. I just thought that joining active threw me to the fire a little faster and made me mature faster, made me gain those leadership, discipline, sort of time management skills that I wouldn't have gotten if I had gone into college or went straight into the career field. So active is it just makes you do that a little bit faster. Reserves, I would say, probably after your third or fourth year, because you become an NCO usually year 4, give or take. It takes a little longer for reserves, about a year longer than active to become an NCO. I think I got corporal around 2 years, maybe a little bit more in active, and I knew a reservist that took 3 or 4 years to become corporal. So yeah, it becoming in the NCO is, I mean, the first, obviously you're junior enlisted, you're going to get the time management, the discipline, all that. But once you hit that NCO level, it's just a different ball game. It's you have people under you. You're essentially HR all the time. You're human resources. Hey corporal, hey sergeant, this happened on Liberty this weekend, and it's just like, yep, yep, So you're essentially HR all the time. So yeah, I would say join the Marine Corps one, or join any branch one, and then whether it's active, reserves, and just try like hell to become an NCO, because that is one of the best, one of my proudest accomplishments is becoming those NCO ranks, corporal and sergeant. So,
And I love that advice, because I think that's something too. There is something about being in the Marine Corps and that experience just like washing over you, like being active. you there's so many things that like me and my husband talk about it all the time that like you failed as a leader in the Marine Corps if you haven't taught your Marines to do a lot of like things that in a regular job you would never teach the people around you, right? Like from finances to purchasing their
Financial
first
management.
call. Yeah, like there are just so many things that I think doing those as a Marine make you such a better leader for the rest of the time in your life. Because as you said, I mean, there's people are people and stuff happens in life. And you actually have to deal with that, I think, a lot more in the Marine Corps and being active duty than you do just like in other jobs.
Tab, I kind of learned how to be sort of a big brother slash parent in the Marine Corps because I had Marines coming from the deep South, the bowels of the Midwest, and some of them never learned to do laundry before. You know, their parents or had always done it for them, or they grew up in foster care or whatever, and they're like, I'm like, Devil Dog, why does your cami stink? And they're like, Sergeant, I don't know how to do laundry. And just a simple take them to the laundry room, get them some detergent, show them how to do it, makes all the difference. Obviously, everyone knows how to make a bed, in boot camp. But just like simple things like, like put a pillowcase on. I couldn't tell you how many nasties I met that just didn't wear, that didn't have a pillowcase. I was like, oh, come on, put a pillowcase on, or buy a new pillow, then put a pillowcase on. And just like, just essentially, it's like Big Brother. It's a lot of it is your big brother. Some of these kids, don't know how to do personal financial management. All of a sudden, they get a giant $3,000 check from boot camp, and then boom, Dodge Charger, 23% interest rate, or boom, big major, purchase, and then like Devil Dog, what is all this like chow in your room? It's like, Sergeant, I can't afford to go out and get food. I have to go to the chow hall like 3 times a day. It's like things like that. Financial management was another huge one. That I had to sit down with Marines to do budgets. Physical fitness. When I got to my second unit, I was in charge of whatever you call the Marines that didn't tape, that had to tape.
Yeah.
And it was my job to get them to be able to tape, or get them to the point where they could pass the PFT, pass CFT, even if they were over height and weight standards. So that type of stuff. And yeah, I mean, a lot of big brother, a lot of parent stuff, but wouldn't change it for the world.
How do you think that made you as a leader now outside of the Marine Corps and in the federal workforce? And we'll talk more in depth of like your transition and what you're doing in the federal workforce. But how do you think that's made you a better leader?
Accountability. I hold my coworkers accountable, and that comes from the Marine Corps. Also, um, speaking up if something doesn't make sense. I never did Lean Six Sigma, but I had a lot of staff NCOs and NCOs that did go to Lean Six Sigma, and they imparted a lot of, is this the most efficient way to do things? And there's a lot of that, a lot of inefficiencies in the government, unfortunately, and there is a lot of ways we can improve it. And unfortunately, it takes a lot of time to get it that way, and it takes trial and error, providing, you know, before and after reports of, this is how long it took to do X task. When we change the format, or when we transition to this way to do it, our time was this. And so that's sort of, efficiency, accountability, leadership. I mean, I'm not in a supervisory role right now, so I'm not really using it as much as I would like to. But that's just because there's very few supervisory experiences in my state. It's all at that 12 and up level. And I just haven't been here long enough. But I did take a pathways intern as the mentorship program that they're starting to get off the ground. So I am able to impart a little bit of what I learned in the Marine Corps towards the mentoring. And she's actually in ROTC for Northeastern, I think. She's working with with Marine officer recruiters at Boston, and she goes to Northeastern now, and she's gonna join. She's gonna try to join the OCS ranks when she graduates Northeastern. So that's kind of why they gave her to me, because they're like, "Hey, John, you're in the Marine Corps. I know you're enlisted, but can you talk to her about your experiences?" And absolutely, sure, no, was happy to do it. So.
The Oath We Took podcast, hosted by Marine Corps veteran Tab Bartley, tells the Marine Corps story through the Marines who served. While every story is unique, the common bond is the oath they all took. Tune in Mondays at 5 p.m. Eastern on Wreaths Across America Radio to catch these engaging conversations. Tab is also supporting the Military Women's Memorial through her Wreaths Across America sponsorship page. For every veteran's wreath you sponsor at wreathsacrossamerica.org/theoathwetook, $5 will go directly to the Military Women's Memorial, the leading memorial and education center honoring the commitment, contributions, and experiences of servicewomen. Once again, to donate, go to wreathsacrossamerica.org/theoathwetook.
So what, and that kind of brings up, I think, kind of the perfect segue to your transition out of the Marine Corps. So it wasn't like completely planned. It was instead like not unplanned, but like, something that you had made the decision.
It was me getting out was completely planned. I knew I was for and out kind of guy. I was never going to be a career guy, mainly because motor transport was not a career. There was really no career I saw myself doing 20 years with. So unless they had golf and turf management for Marine Corps, which they don't. So yeah, I knew I was getting out after 4, but what I did was I really leveraged when I got I did the 2 in Okinawa, and I went to Pendleton, and I immediately, when I got to Pendleton, I started doing stuff to prepare myself for the next phase. I had exactly a year and a half left on my contract, so I went to Dana Point to the VFW and took the how to file your disability claim before I got out. So did that whole process. These guys walked you through every single step. It was fantastic. And I dragged my buddy. My buddy's a 0351 with me. Picked him up in San Mateo or San Clemente, and just drove him. I said, we're going to Dana Point 7 a.m. to do this class, and he is forever grateful because we got great ratings immediately after we got out. And it was because we took that class and we knew what the heck to do. I did like OSHA classes when I got to my second unit in Pendleton. And I was like, oh, I'll be the safety representative and the hazardous materials representative for the unit if you'll send me to these certificate classes. Lo and behold, I'm pocketing these classes because I want those certificates when I get out. I want to be able to say that I was a hazmat handler. I want to be able to say I was a safety. So they sent me to OSHA 10, OSHA 30. I even wanted to do like OSHA 501, which is like the OSHA instructor course. I never ended up doing it, but yeah, took advantage of a lot of those opportunities while when I got to the States. So how I got out of the Marine Corps, got out in May of 2017. Took obviously my month of whatever, bought my leave out or used my leave in conjunction with my EAS. Drove cross country, enrolled in community college for the fall of 2017. Just did 1 year there. It made most sense not to do an associate's there. So I just got all those gen eds knocked out and then immediately transferred to University of Massachusetts Amherst, because they have an agricultural school called Stockbridge School of Agriculture, and they have many different majors. They're very old, prestigious college for agriculture. And I chose the turfgrass science management, which is three jobs you can do. It's golf course grounds management, it's stadiums like Fenway Park, Gillette Stadium, football, baseball, and then the third would be like cemeteries or lawn care type stuff.
Oh, well, that makes sense. See, I didn't think of that. Like when you were like 3, I was like, I could not. Like I was like,
yeah. So just think anything
what would be the third?
anything grass, anything grass, and it's essentially what it is it's a plant and soil science degree. But that last year, you're just taking very turf specific ones. So like where a plant and soil science would go take insects that affect all crops, I would take insects that affect turf grass. But we take all the same, plant physiologies, plant stress physiologies, take all the organic chemistries, all the pathology classes. So all of it's the same for the first 3 years. So a lot of soil conservationists, which is my job in USDA, have plant and soil science degrees or environmental science degrees, depending on which route they go. There's like natural resource specialists, there's soil conservationists, but you just need some sort of plant and soil science degree or environmental science degree. So, like I said, did 1 year community college, then I did 2.5 years at Stockbridge School of Agriculture, part of UMass Amherst. Got out, went straight into the golf industry. Did a few internships in the summer on golf courses. Loved it. First full-time job out of school was a course where I had a very difficult supervisor, a very difficult superintendent. Great guy, tough boss. And I had obviously had many different leaders in the Marine Corps, good and bad. And this guy was just another level. Wouldn't let me elevate, wouldn't let me seek out opportunities. Just very, very hard. And I had just had my first child. Probably a year, a little less, about 6 to 8 months from starting that job, and having my first kid in conjunction with how he ran things, how he operated. It was very old school, and I was okay with it. But then obviously, I'm in the federal workforce, like it's a lot better for having families. And it was really, really hard. There was about a year where I just got home and it was nothing left. Emotionally, physically, it was. So like, just for reference, like we would work, the regular workers would work 6 to 2:30. So that was their shift. We would get there at like 5:15, set up all the stuff for them, write out their daily jobs, and then we'd stay till 2:30. But in the summer, we'd stay till like 3:30 sometimes. But in the summer, you had to manage wilt, which is grass that is dying, and you have to keep it just alive enough that it's fast for the golfers, but you can't oversaturate it. Otherwise, it's just a puddle, and the golfers get pissed. So you're there till like 5 o'clock, just watering until the sun goes down, and then you go home. Had a brand new baby. I'm covered in, sweat, sand, ton of pesticides. We applied a lot of insecticides, fungicides, pesticides, and I was either spraying or helping spraying or sort of on the side of the green while they're spraying. So I'm catching a lot of drift. I'm covered in this stuff. I get home, I can't hold my son right away, even though I really want to, because I could transfer anything. So I have to go shower, basically decontaminate myself every day. I was exhausted, and then finally 6, 7 o'clock rolls around. I finally can hang out with my kid. He put him down, and then wake up 4:30 next morning. So it was hard. It was Monday to Saturday every week. And in the summer, they're there from 5:15 to 5 p.m. So it was tough. It was really tough with the baby, with the kids. And so we knew we needed a change. I actually, when the whole like, hey, I want to go seek out other jobs, he gave me the ultimatum. He's like, you either gotta hold out for that job, and I'm gonna find someone to replace you. He actually started doing interviews while I was still working there. He's like, or you got to pull out of the race, and you're mine for the season. And I was like, okay. So I was like, I need a job. So I pulled out of the race. And I worked for a couple months, and we just said, me and my wife were just like, let's call it. Called it. I was laid off for, I want to say 3 to 5 months, looking for jobs. I worked at Lululemon, I did retail. I was looking at other, I just did something to, tide me over the summer. And I joined USDA in August of 2021, I think. Right? That sounds right. 2021, 22. I think maybe 21 or 22. Can't remember. But August, and I haven't looked back. I started working out of this town called Wareham, which is before Cape Cod. Now I work on Cape Cod. And my boss, I can't say enough good things about her. She is fantastic. Coast Guard veteran herself.
Coastie,
And
a
yeah,
coastie.
Coastie. Yeah, she's a Coastie. So she hired me. She loves vets. I would say she kind of has like a little bit of a penchant for them. There's like 3 or 4 vets on just our staff. And can't say enough good things about it. So a year went by. I had my second kid. Got my nice, 3 months of paternity that the USDA does. Can't say enough good things about paternity leave. I was able to space it out too. I did basically like 4 or 5 months. I worked like 10, 15 hours a week periodically, so it worked out
Love
really
that.
good. They were very flexible with that. So I got back and I was like, hey, look, to my boss, I was like, I'd like to buy a house on the Cape. Would I be able to transfer to that other office? That it's only 10 minutes from where I would want to live. And she said, absolutely, no problem. I will make it happen. And so we bought the house, and I want to say like 2 months later, I was permanent full time over here. I still go to Wareham just once a week for meetings and stuff, and to see the guys, because I miss my coworkers. But I basically work in a like a 2 or 3 office, like 2 or 3 room hut shack, captain's house on the Cape on Route 28 in West Yarmouth. And I go to work my sandals. I go to the beach and talk with my producers, because my producers are aquaculture producers, shell fishermen. And it's such a cool place to work. It's such a good spot. And like I said, going from such a regimented, really, really hard to work for boss to one that is extremely understanding, accepting, flexible. Also a veteran is helpful as well. I can't say enough good things about working for USDA, particularly my boss.
And how did you get into USDA? I think that's something that a lot of people, like, federal service seems very daunting, of like the different career paths and the different ways to get in. So how were you hired with USDA? Was it one of the special hiring authorities? Was it through an internship? How did you get on board?
So another sort of non-traditional way. My wife worked for our rural development for 5 years. She joined, at 20 years old, she started her Pathways internship. So her old boss, because she had left rural development, now she works for AMS, same as you. She just works in the commodity procurement side. And so her old boss heard that I was looking for a job. He knew the degree I had, and he himself went to Stockbridge as well. He went for floriculture way back in the day when they still had that major. So he understood sort of the requirements that NRCS has. Then that's the agency I work for within USDA, is Natural Resource Conservation Service. And so he had an idea, and he was the he's a GS 13 or 14 in rural development. So he's 30-year guy, very knows the ins and outs of the other agencies. He was like, John should apply for NRCS. They have an office in Holden, and they also have an office in Wareham, and those are kind of in between you guys. And me and my wife got together. She helped me with my USA Jobs application, and the resume was the big thing in getting it just right with the times worked here from this month to that month and number of days. It's very specific, and it's all because it's a computer that is reading it and sort of filtering it, and you have to have it just right so the computer can read it. And then I had I looked into what do I need to do to get the sort of the 10-point preference. And so, SF 15, DD 214, my current like disability rating, all that type of stuff. Uploaded that into USA Jobs. It was actually pretty easy. I wouldn't say it was that hard. It was more the resume that was the tough part, tweaking. But we got it right, and I think I got hired with special authority because my boss said, I still had an interview, but after the interview, it was pretty quick. In which I heard back, but you don't really know like if you beat out other candidates. She just said, "Oh, you get the job." But I
Yeah.
would think that I know that I had the 10 point for the veteran and the 10 point for 30% or more. So I know I got
Yeah.
both of those 20%. So I would assume that I got hired with special hiring authority.
Yeah.
If I have those special qualifiers, I guess, on my EPP dashboard, which I do. So.
Yeah, and just like a point of reference for people, so that 10-point preference is what he is talking about in regards to disabled veterans, people with disabilities. There's a number of different ones that you can go to OHRM to see all of those special hiring authorities. When we are talking non-competitive hire, those are jobs that are not posted on USA Jobs. So even though a job is not posted on or is posted on USA Jobs, there are still additional benefits that can put your resume kind of like above the punch on it. So that's where I think it's really important to note, because as you see, it has a big impact on being able to get the job. Before
And my job was posted, so it was
yes.
a job posting.
And before we talked, you asked if there were things that, you wanted to make sure that we talked about. And one of them was mental health with children and going through that. And so I want to kind of talk about that with you, because that's one of my favorite topics, isn't the right thing to say, but something that anytime anybody wants to talk about this, I think it's really important because we don't hear it enough. So how has that been, being a parent and, handling your mental health and the impact on your family and your children?
So yeah, like I said, I was in a really dark place when I was working on the golf course, immediately post college. I want to say it was like that 2020, 2021 area. Um, it was dark. I was coming home, like I said, and I was covered in God knows what, exhausted. Was missing out on a lot of my child's, first moments. I missed his first year. Obviously, there's photos and stuff of weekends and stuff, but during the day, I would miss speaking moments, walking moments, major milestones in his growth, and I forever regret to this day not joining USDA sooner, um, because the work-life balance is so good in the job that I have now versus the job I had before. Also weighed on me during that time where I was in a dark place. It was also some sort of physical ailments that did not contribute positively to my mental health. So.
And I have to, anytime somebody is willing to talk about like those dark times and what they've went through, but also what they've done to like get out of them, right? And not stay there and to do all these things and to make these choices to persevere and push through. I just always just have to thank you for being willing to share that piece of your story, because I think so many of us, part of it is just like you said, like the being alone in it or feeling alone in it, or, not having an unbiased opinion or somebody to talk to. And so I commend you and thank you for being willing to share that piece of your story. Before I ask the last question, which again, every time I have a podcast, I'm like, where did the time go? I feel like there's 20 other things I could ask or talk about. But before I ask the last question, is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to make sure we talk about or we bring up?
I would just rehash some of my things. Is really have a plan. When you're thinking about transitioning out of the Marine Corps, have a plan. Take advantage of those separation classes that they do. Creating a LinkedIn profile, resume creation. Oh, one of the biggest things that I found helpful was when I was in community college. I did a class that did not count for credits, transfer credits, but it was one of the most important classes. It was resume writing and career development or something along those lines, where all we did was create like probably 10 different types of resumes. You had your chronological, you had your all the different ones like CVs, education history, and just formatting it different ways. And then we also did how to create a LinkedIn profile, and we also did a mock interview with the guy. That was our final, I guess you call it the final exam, was to do an interview with him, and we trained basically throughout the semester. And I can't say enough good things about it. His name is Steve Bonkowski, and he taught at Mass Bay Community College. And he did, I think it was like a career resume writing and career development sort of course. Probably the best course I took in all my 3.5 years of college, of undergraduate. It was quite literally, it took that SEPs class we take and just took it to a whole nother level, where you're doing an entire semester of just creation of important potential employment products that you would need. And God, if he could just create that on his own, link tree on his, on his social media, he could just teach classes on that like virtually, because that was such a phenomenal class. So that was really important. Really seeking out, USA jobs, looking at postings. I love what I learned in one of our classes at the VEO was like, if it's an external posting, you can actually jump a GS level. You could be a 7, and if it's an external posting for an 11, you can apply. I didn't know that. Like, it's the internal ones you have to actually follow. Okay, I've been a 9 for a year. I've been a 7 for a year. I can apply for it. I can apply for stuff. But the external ones, you can. That's pretty important, because I know, some people that are way overqualified, GS7s, GS5s, bachelor's degree, leadership experience, supervisory experience, all that are getting paid crap, basically. And they could be 10 times better than some 12s I know, some 13s I know, some 11s I know. So, yeah, I would say kind of the U.S. government's a little bit like the reserves, where you could have some really low ranking people that are highly qualified, and you have some higher ranking people that are not qualified. So,
but you make a good point, because like you said earlier, if your resume though speaks to you being able to do these things, then you are qualified. I think that's something that, at least in my experience, my transition was a little like, I saw it a little more in the federal government space. You just had to figure out how to articulate that you had the experience and had the stuff, and then those opportunities were there. Again, like you said, if you knew that they were there and you knew you could do it. I feel like there's a lot of unknowns, which maybe we get you on with a few other federal Marines we have, and we just have like a whole not a bash session, but a whole like federal employee like talk about how to find some federal opportunities. But
and can I just do a quick shameless plug?
Yeah.
All right. So for those of you listening, I am the Veterans Emphasis Program Manager for NRCS for Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And so one of my jobs is Title VII outreach. And what that means is I am trying to actively recruit veterans to USDA, specifically NRCS. But if you just contact me, I can help you find any job in USDA. So if you are in the Massachusetts or Rhode Island area, and you have sort of an agricultural or environmental science background, and you're looking for a job in the federal sector, please do not hesitate to contact me. I'm on LinkedIn as my name, John Timothy Locke. You could just do that, USDA. And like I said, I'm a soil conservationist out of West Yarmouth, Massachusetts. So, and I also provide resources for our current veteran employees for my 2 states, Mass and Rhode Island. So if anyone is looking for a job, within USDA, specifically NRCS, I'm more than happy to help you find a position.
And I'm so glad you gave that plug, and I'll make sure in the bio and all of that to include that as well. But with that, I sadly have to ask the last question,
Sure.
Which is, if you had to take the oath again, would you?
100%. 100%. I'm actually more like right now, I would be more willing to join than if you had asked me when I was 17 or 18 in the delayed entry. I was like, oh man, because I was in the delayed entry program for almost a year, so I had a lot of time to think about it, and I'd be more willing to go now. If I didn't have 2 kiddos and a wife and a house and all this, I would still be in some sort of branch right now.
This is the Oath We Took podcast, and you just heard a piece of John's story. You now know one more Marine and one more piece of Marine Corps history. His sacrifices matter. His stories matter. Not every Marine story is the same. We didn't all join the Marine Corps for the same reason. What is the same is the oath we all took. An oath that easily could have ended in death, and for some, it did. So listeners, instead of asking you to thank a Marine for their service, I am going to challenge you to continue to listen to their stories instead.